On the tinsel front is a dramatized reading of letters written by an American soldier, Corporal Oliver Whelan, to his sister Elizabeth during World War II. These letters were discovered 4 decades after the war in the attic of a London home. This is Season 1, Episode 2, Dishwasher.
December 11th, 1942. Dear Bet, it's night and I'm back in my moldy tent after my first full day with the 1st Motion Picture Unit. As ordered, I was at the base at 0800, only Lieutenant Reagan wasn't there. Miller, the typist from the day before, informed me that Reagan would be late because, he said with a wink, there had been a party at Barbara Stanwyck's last night. Telling me to take a seat and offering me a cup of coffee, Miller asked where I was from. Connecticut. What about you? How did you end up here?
I didn't have to go far. I'm born and bred here in L.A. Grew up in the movies. My dad was a grip at Warner's. He died when I was 8, and my mom went to work as a pool typist there. She taught me how to type when I was 10. I'm kind of a typing prodigy. I can do close to 200 words a minute.
I assume that's fast?
Not to boast, but yes, fabulously so. Typing in Warner's out of high school led me to working in the production office. That's tough about flight school. I had fantasies about being a war hero, but the Army decided I had skills better used here. I was disappointed at first, but I'm fine with being here at Fort Roach.
They call this place Fort Roach? Why, is it infested?
Well, that too. No, before the war, it was the Hal Roach Studios, where Laurel and Hardy and the Our Gang films were made. When the Army took it over, Fort Roach seemed appropriate.
It wasn't until close to 9 that Reagan stumbled in. He looked a bit worse for wear, but had a little grin. It must have been a hell of a party.
Cup of coffee, Miller.
He plopped in his chair and stared at his desk as if for a moment he didn't know what it was, or even why he was sitting behind it. Noticing I was sitting opposite him, he gave me the same kind of look, apparently having forgotten who I was. For a few moments, we just sat there, staring at each other, hoping the other would start talking first. In his case, it may have been a dare. I broke first. Private Whelan, sir. From yesterday, I was assigned here after washing out of flight school. You told me to report this morning.
Your coffee, sir.
Thanks, Miller.
He consumed the Java with an impressive focus. This appeared to flip some switch in his brain, and within a few minutes he came out of his stupor.
Oh, right. Whelan. From what I recall, we have no idea why you're here.
Yes, sir. Some sort of mistake, sir.
Which means I have to try to find out. Miller, how might I do that?
A letter to the Air Force Command in Washington?
Sounds good.
If I may, sir, rather than wait weeks for an answer to that inquiry, I'd rather just go ahead and put in a request for transfer to the infantry or some other combat unit, if that's okay with you.
Well, I'm not about to say no to you. Miller, do you have those forms and know where to send them?
As if he had read my mind, Miller stepped up with the form and laid it in front of me.
You sign right here. I can get it off today. Lieutenant, we could attach a letter explaining that Private Whelan was apparently sent here by mistake. That may facilitate things.
An excellent idea.
As I signed, I was beginning to suspect that it was Miller who really ran this place, not Reagan, who by now was coming fully out of his hangover and resuming the snappy commander character he had played so well yesterday.
You sure you want to do this, Whelan?
Yes, sir, I do.
Okay, then. A transfer, however, will take some time. So what are we going to do with you until then?
I don't know, sir.
Are you an artist?
Excuse me?
Well, can you draw, paint, create pretty pictures? There's always need in the art department. The animators could also use you.
Sorry, sir, but no.
Well, what about carpentry? You know your way around a saw and a hammer?
Not really.
Does your father happen to be a house painter, a skill he passed on to you?
No.
Electrician?
No.
Any craft at all? Something you did during summers?
No.
You go to college?
Yes, sir, 1.5 years before I enlisted.
What did you study?
Business, mainly.
You weren't, by chance, one of those kids who'd take a radio apart and put it back together just because you could, huh? You know, naturally good at fixing things. We got a lot of machines around here.
Sorry again, not me.
So what is it you do, Whelan?
Not knowing whether this was a rhetorical or actual question, I didn't reply. I also didn't answer because I didn't have one. When I enlisted for flight school, I had such purpose. I knew who I was and where I was going. I was comfortable with the idea of being a pilot, and I fit in at pre-flight. But from the second I washed out, I felt lost. Particularly so now. Reagan's questions were simply reminding me of how damn useless I was.
Miller, what are we going to do with this guy?
Well, sir, Bellows has been short-handed since, well, you know.
Right. Bellows. In the mess.
Reagan's eyes lit up with the bliss that comes when a man solves a seemingly unsolvable problem.
Yes, the mess. You are, Whelan, qualified for something. Something we're all qualified for, which is peeling potatoes and washing dishes. Sorry to stick that on you, but it's only for a few weeks. You'll survive. Miller, take the private down to the mess hall and introduce him.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir. Outside, Miller was apologetic.
Oh, I'm sorry, Whelan, but the mess is genuinely short a man, and it's only until your transfer comes through.
It's okay.
You know, I assumed that because you're from back east, you don't know much about movie making. So let me show you around first.
Bet, remember when we saw The Wizard of Oz? I took the train down to see you in New York City in September of '39. Germany had invaded Poland and the war had begun, but the ramifications of that hadn't really sunk in yet. Anyway, remember in the movie after the tornado deposits the farmhouse and Dorothy opens the door to reveal the land of Oz and all its technicolor beauty? Well, it was a bit like that for me when Miller took me around the base. I mean, the studio. A whole new world. We first went to what they call a soundstage, a big, huge building, the size of an airplane hangar, in which they shoot the movies. In this one, they were building the set of the headquarters of a U.S. Air Force base in the South Pacific. It was amazing how real it looked. From there, we went to a shop where they were building all different kinds of models, from planes like our P-40s to Japanese Zeros. They called it the Miniatures Department. Next was what Miller called the Animation Building, animation being what they call cartoons. Yes, they make cartoons here. In this big room, there are all these guys at drawing boards. Miller explained the process, but it's too complicated for me to remember or explain. Did you know that every step of a character's movement is a separate drawing? Something as simple as raising an arm is like a dozen different drawings filmed in order. It's astounding. He pointed out the costume shop and the prop department where I saw that guy I met out front yesterday. In something called a scoring stage, orchestras record music for the movies. Finally, we arrived at the mess hall, where Miller stopped me and lowered his voice.
So, here's the thing about Bellows, the mess sergeant. He can be difficult. He's a sergeant because he served in World War I. They gave him his old rank when he re-enlisted. Since he cooked at Chasen's, he thinks he's special. And he expected the Army to send him off to Washington to cook for generals. The fact he ended up here pisses him off. And I'm sorry to say, he takes it out on the guys who work for him. Just keep your head down. And remember, it's his problem, not yours. Hey, Sarge, how's it going?
Don't kiss my ass, Miller, unless you found me a new cook.
Well, we haven't exactly gotten that, but we've got you some help. This here is Private Whelan, fresh to the base and happy to help you out for a while.
Bellows, who looked more like a wrestler than a chef, gave me a glare that was melting.
You have any experience in a kitchen, kid?
No, sir, I'm sorry to say.
Oh, I'm tired of this, Miller. I can't spend my time breaking in newbies.
Lieutenant Reagan is working on a permanent replacement, I promise.
Tell him to work harder, or I'll come up to that office and whip his ass. And I don't give a shit that he's an officer. To me, he's just another no-good actor, and always will be. And you,
Whelan?
Get an apron in the back room and get back here. We serve lunch in an hour.
Yes, sir.
You do exactly what I tell you to do. Got it? Exactly. And you, Miller, get the hell out of here. I don't want to see your face again until you have what I need.
Yes, Sarge.
Miller gave me an apologetic look and headed out the door. I'll bet it was a terrible day.
Oh, for God's sakes, don't serve such big portions. You want us to run out of food?
Bellows worked me to the bone, yelling the whole time.
You call this pot clean? What did you do, try to lick out the grease? Do it again, this time with water and that thing called soap.
Now, back in my tent, I'm exhausted. That transfer better come soon. Combat will come as a relief after this job. Dear Bet, it's been a week since I started working in the mess. Every day has been hell.
What are you doing with that knife? You want to cut off your finger? Here we season our food with salt, not your blood.
My fellow mess workers won't reveal much, but I've gleaned that the soldier I replaced suffered some sort of mental breakdown.
There's no such thing as dirt in my kitchen. You make sure the floor is as clean as the dishes. But wait, I forgot. You're the guy who washes dishes with his tongue.
No longer able to put it off, I finally wrote to the parents. Dear Mother and Father, hope you are well. I'm going to keep this brief because there's not that much to tell. Due to my body's inability to tolerate high altitude, I am unfit to fly and am no longer in flight school. Because of what appears to be some bureaucratic mistake, I was sent to the wrong base in California. I won't bore you with the whole story, but it's being worked out, and I expect to be on my way to the infantry soon. We'll keep you informed. In the meantime, know that I am safe and healthy. Love, Ollie.
I said sliced, not diced. Though the word dice would never apply to these mutilations.
I figured out that everyone in the studio is terrified of Sergeant Bellows. The soldiers lining up for food at lunch are notably polite and well-behaved out of fear of triggering some tirade from the man. The irony is that while he is a miserable and abusive person, he's an amazing cook. It's agreed that we have the best food of any base in California, if not the whole Army. With food that good, everyone is willing to put up with his behavior. Except perhaps me. Dear Bet, this afternoon I'm washing dishes after lunch when a soldier came by and tells me that Reagan wanted to see me. Bellows having just stepped out, I was afraid of just leaving, but figured I had to obey a summons from an officer, and went to the sound stage with the set of the Pacific Island Air Base HQ. Reagan was there with another man whom he introduced. His name was something like Vorhaus. He was a director.
So, Whelan, I called you here because we're making a film that will instruct pilots on how to identify a Japanese hero. Apparently the boys in the Pacific are having difficulties distinguishing them from our own planes.
Okay.
It occurred to me that you're perfect for the part of the young pilot who's just joined the squadron and thinks he'd never make such a stupid mistake.
Me?
Yes. You're the right age, and you've been to flight school. You can bring some authenticity to the role.
I don't know.
Don't worry. It's just an audition. Nothing to get nervous about.
The director, who was looking skeptical, finally spoke.
You ever done any acting, son?
No, not really.
Not even in school plays?
I don't think so.
How about the Christmas pageant? Anything like that?
If you count that, I think in 3rd grade, or maybe it was 2nd, I was a shepherd. Vorhaus sighed and looked at Reagan as if to ask, are we really doing this?
Look, Whelan, there's a first time for everything. You don't know until you try. That was certainly the case with me. And who knows, maybe you're the next Gabriel. Come on, Bernie, let's try 'em out.
Vorhaus sighed again, then handed me a page with some movie dialogue on it.
I want you to read this speech given by this young pilot. His name is Jimmy Saunders. Before this scene, Saunders went out on patrol by himself and, mistaking a P-40 for a Zero, shot at it.
Luckily, he missed, but he realized his mistake and feels like a shit.
When Saunders gets back to the base, the pilot he shot at is there bitching to the commanding officer, a major who's furious. Not giving Saunders a chance to explain, the major demands to see the footage from his plane's nose camera.
The footage confirms Saunders shot at the other pilot's P-40, but then shows that soon afterwards, he engaged with an actual Japanese Zero.
Finally allowed to speak, Saunders reveals what happened. That's this speech. Got it?
Yes, sir, I guess. They gave me a few minutes to read over the lines. God, I was nervous. For a second, I felt like I did back in Louisiana before I climbed into the plane for yet another one of those nightmarish conditioning flights. I was sure I was going to throw up again, right onto Reagan's shoes.
Okay, let's do this.
Just relax, Whelan, and be yourself.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes. Here I go, sir. Following my encounter with the lieutenant here, I was flying, wondering if I should slit my throat. I felt like a candidate for the Jap Air Force, getting time to turn for home. Not that I was homesick. I had a hunch what was in store for me. There was no use stalling. I was thinking that other guy was probably back already, telling the major how he almost got knocked down by another P-40. Thinking what you'd tell me when I got back. Suddenly I stopped thinking. Another plane. I tried to make her out. She was too far away. I started to dive. I had to get my recognition right this time. Reagan and Vorhaus said nothing. They just looked at each other.
Thanks, Whelan. We'll let you know. You're dismissed.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. I could hear them whispering as I headed to the exit.
Okay, we tried. Now will you just play the part?
Okay. Just trying to give the kid a break. The poor guy's working for Bellows.
So, I guess I'm not an actor. When I got back to the mess, Bellows had returned and was furious about the pile of unwashed dishes I had abandoned.
And where the hell have you been?
Lieutenant Reagan requested me on a set, Sarge.
I don't give a shit if General Marshall asked for you. You don't leave without my permission. You understand?
I started to explain that he hadn't been here to give it, but knew he wouldn't care. Yes, Sarge.
Ding dong, ding, them bells are playing loud and clear.
Dear Bet, so it's Christmas Day. We were given the day off, but I didn't have any place to go or anyone to see, so I just stayed here at the military academy. I did take a long walk around Culver City. Believe it or not, it's sunny and something like 80 degrees out. And windy. They served turkey for dinner in the mess, but that only made me miss Christmas at home. And you. I got a package of food and gifts from Mother. It took a long time to catch up with me because she sent it a month ago before I had washed out. She included a letter. While brightly filling me in on what's going on in Torrington, she couldn't disguise her worry. She started going to Mass every day.
During which I think of nothing but you, and ask God to keep you safe.
Yeah, safe from Sergeant Bellows.
Ding dong, bells they chime, for now it's Christmas time.
Dear Bet, 2 weeks into 1943, There's a small improvement in my situation. I'm out of the leaky tent and in my own room in a house with a real bed. How'd that happen? Reagan called me in to tell me that because of a group of combat cameramen coming in for training, they needed every available spot at the military academy, and so he had to get me out of there. But I was in luck. He knew someone who rented out rooms nearby and had one free. Nothing fancy, but cheap. After work, I walked over to check it out. The neighborhood was an established one of the first, I suspected, after some developer named Harry Culver founded the city and named it after himself. When I got to the address, I couldn't tell whether the architect was being serious or ironic. It looked like someplace Hansel and Gretel would have stopped at if they were intentionally looking for the witch. Medieval wood beam construction, little turrets and towers, and believe it or not, a thatched roof, or at least it looked thatched. Suspecting I'd be greeted by an old woman clad in black, sporting a wart and bearing a shiny red apple, I rang the doorbell.
Gosh darn it. This better be good.
What I got wasn't much less intimidating. A large woman wearing paint-splattered overalls and holding a drippy paintbrush.
What is it? Be quick, because I'm in the middle.
I'm here about the room.
Oh, right. That actor, what's his name, called me about you. What's your name?
Whelan, ma'am. Private Oliver Whelan.
Well, Private Oliver Whelan, I'm Lois. Come on in.
She stepped back and ushered me in. I stepped across the threshold into the living room. The beam and plaster motif was continued, and leaded windows mottled the light. There were drop cloths everywhere, including one covering a baby grand piano in the corner.
I'd ask you to excuse the mess, but I frankly don't care what you think. I've got to get this done.
This is an amazing house. Whoever built it really had an imagination.
That would be Francis Longfellow, a set designer at MGM. Loved the Brothers Grimm. Wanted to live in a fairy tale. He passed in 1938. Left it to me.
Were you related?
No, just friends. We worked together. I'm a construction manager. I oversaw the building of Francis's designs. He had no family to leave it to, so I won the prize.
Really is something.
Yes, but a pain in the behind. Whimsy is one thing on a set that stands for a few weeks and is then torn down, but it's another in a house that's supposed to withstand the elements for years. Because of a leak in that blessed thatched roof, I had to replace the plaster on this wall. I rent out the rooms to pay for the repairs, but I still can't keep up with them. I have to tell you, the room is tiny, not much more than a closet. But the bed is comfy, and a little window looks out on the garden.
Sounds great to me. I've been on a cot in a leaky tent.
Just so it's clear now, I normally only rent to women. I'm making an exception because that actor made it sound as if we'd lose the war if you couldn't find a place to live. You can have the room, but no hanky-panky, understand? You do anything to annoy my two girls and you're out of here, understand?
Yes, ma'am.
Not that you'll see much of them if you work normal hours. They're on the swing shift over at the Hughes aircraft plant. They'll be asleep when you leave in the morning and at work when you get back.
The bedroom actually was a closet. A hanger rod ran along one side, and there was barely enough room for a bed and a tiny dresser. But the window was terrific, small and high up, but you could look out at the garden and up towards the hills above the town.
One more thing. I'm your landlady, not your mother. Don't come running to me if you're feeling blue or have girl problems.
Yes, ma'am. The next night, I packed up my kit at the academy and moved into Lois's. As I unpacked, someone started playing the piano in the living room. Curious who that could be, I peeked in to see it was Lois. I was surprised. It was the last thing I expected of such a tough cookie. As I returned to my room, she started playing one of those Mozart pieces you used to play. can't say exactly which one. I was suddenly very homesick and wished we could all go back to sometime before the war. On an actual bed, I slept like the dead. The only time I woke up was when I heard my female housemates coming home from their shift.
Stop saying that. I won't stop saying it. He's in love with you. He's so hideous. He's so ugly. He's not ugly.
I wanted to get up and see who they were and maybe introduce myself, but I was just too tired and let myself drift back to sleep. Dear Bet, whether because he started to like me or because he just wants me out of sight, Bellows has given me the job of coffee man. Every morning at 9, I push a cart with a big urn of coffee around the studio. I stop at each stage and department so guys can fill their cups.
No gabbing or dilly-dallying now. You move through the lot like this. And get back here by 10. If you're a minute late, I'll give the job to Perkins, and he's a bigger idiot than you.
Besides the fact it's a blissful hour away from Bellows the Beast, what I like about this job is that it gives me a chance to learn about all the different things that go into making a movie. Everyone is real nice and more than happy to answer my stupid questions about what it is they do. This morning, for instance, this sound editor named Ray offered to show me how he uses a machine called a moviola to put in a sound effect and sync it up with the action. I don't know if I have the time. Bellows will kill me if I'm late back to the mess.
No worries, it'll just take a minute. See this footage of a P-40 turning and diving?
Yeah?
Well, that was shot from another plane without any sound, so we need to give it some. Here's a recording from the sound library of a P-40 making the same maneuver. Now, it may not be the right one, but we'll give it a go. So I run the film back to the start of the shot, then we line up the mag tape and run them together.
Huh, amazing.
It's not exactly right yet, but it gives you the idea.
Yeah, it does. Thanks. That's great.
Come back anytime and I'll show you more.
You're late, Whelan.
Yeah, I wanted to say to him, but it was worth it. Dear Bet, it's 4 a.m., I'm wide awake, and just had to tell you how I finally caught a glimpse of my up-to-now mysterious housemates. At 3, I was awakened by the all-too-familiar sound of someone retching. Of course, I had to check it out. I got up and cracked open the door, looking down the hall towards the bathroom. I saw a young woman, a short strawberry blonde, standing vigil at the open door as someone on knees inside kept heaving. This attendant turned, noticed me, gave a shrug, then turned back to her charge.
Feeling better?
Yeah, a little bit.
Okay, then. Let's get you into bed.
She stepped back, letting the sick girl step past her and into my view. Bet? I couldn't believe my eyes. It was Elle, that beautiful brunette from the USO booth at the train station. Still gorgeous, despite the ghostly pallor that comes with bending over a toilet. She turned and saw me and somehow managed a sleepy smile, one that, I admit, filled my heart and had me smiling back. With a sigh and a shake of her head, the other girl redirected Elle's gaze and led her by the arm into their bedroom, closing the door behind them. Feeling a bit like a voyeur, I closed my door and climbed back into bed, unable to get Elle's smile out of my head. I can't believe it. That beautiful girl is my housemate.
On the Tinsel Front is written, produced, and directed by Christopher Bomba. The role of Oliver Weiland is voiced by Brian Stanton. Joining him in this episode is James Coyle as Miller, Gabriel Oliva as Ronald Reagan, Alan Blumenfeld as Bellows, Jonah Weiland as Bernard Vorhaus, Robbie Trombetta as Lois, Chris Bomba as sound editor Ray, Katherine James as Shelly, Samara Frame as Elle, and me, Mary Bomba, as Ollie's mother and your host. While On the Tinsel Front purports to tell a true story, all the characters are fictional, except for the real-life personalities, some more recognizable than others, who actually served in the wartime positions they do here. For more information about these people, Hollywood during World War II, and the actors, visit the podcast website at onthetinselfront.com.